to that? How can we recognize the humanity in somebody else? And why has that become such a bad thing for me to say, you deserve to be treated like a human as well? And I can advocate for you. It's like, it blows me away. But, we all got to dig in. We all got to recognize what's going on. We got to have these courageous conversations and dig deep. And I think we can get to a better place. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful, Sada.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Foster Inclusion Podcast, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host, Saida Gomez-Fleury. In this episode, I have the privilege of interviewing Jonathan Logan of the Cowrie Initiative and BankBlackUSA. Their mission is to promote financial advocacy in Black communities in the U.S. and build upon the work of past generations to level the playing field and close the racial wealth gap. Jonathan also shares why there's a need for Black banking services in the U.S., what it's like to be unbanked or underbanked in a developed country, and so much more. Of course, we discuss Bitcoin and how its accessibility helps to foster financial inclusion. On a very personal note, I'd like to thank Jonathan for his openness. He's gracious in allowing me, a non-American, to ask questions to better understand some of the dynamics that are unfolding in the U.S. As always, if you have questions or comments about this episode, please feel free to share them with me at saida@fosterinclusion.com. Visit thecowrieinitiative.org, bankblackusa.org, and you can find Jonathan on Twitter at Nagelnodge. Links in the show notes.
Hey, welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon by you.
And thank you. Good morning for you. How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored. Thank you.
Nice. That's very American to say that you're blessed. I only hear it from people, actually in Canada too, from people in Canada and the US. Yeah.
I love speaking to people. That's what I really enjoyed about us first talking, is that I get a connection to a different part of the world. And I think that, again, people who are traveled and lived in different parts of the world, they get to see so many different things. So that's interesting to hear. Somewhat of that you mostly hear that from people in the U.S. and maybe Canada. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So for the listeners, can you give us a brief introduction?
Sure. So my name is Jonathan Logan. I am a father of three, a 15-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son, and a 7-year-old daughter. I am a husband to one woman for about, 15 or so years. I am, by way of profession, I've got over 20 years of experience in the fire service here, born and raised here in New York City. And that's been a blast, that profession. But more so, I've been involved really with, I wouldn't say community activism. There's something about having children that makes you want to kind of dive deeper and make things better.
Yes.
Right. And so I started getting involved in, being more civically engaged back when my daughter was born. And it became very real that the only person that was going to make things better for my children was me. And so I had to really start digging deep, participating in various different outlets in the community. So I started getting involved with the community board, the school board, formed Black associations, and just started getting into local government, understanding that a little bit better so that I could kind of leverage and make things better right here locally where I am. So have become somewhat of a community engaged person. I don't want to ever give myself any titles of being any type of leader, but
I understand.
I just want to be in the know, and so I had to start getting involved in different things. So that's a little bit about me. But it's been a blast. So that's a little bit about me and some of the things I've done. Yeah.
That's so for firefighters, do we say New York City's finest as well, or is that?
It would be considered probably. I think our tag is like the bravest, I believe.
Oh, the bravest. There we go.
Yeah. So Yeah, that's like our claim to fame there. But humbly, we just do what we have to do, and our training is what it is, so that we could provide the best customer service to the people here in the city of New York, people and property. So
Yeah. And I think that goes beyond your services as a firefighter, and it certainly goes into what you're doing now. So why BankBlack USA?
yeah, that's a great question. I can appreciate that. So BankBlack really is not something new, and it calls really upon what has already been done. It kind of built on a larger kind of BankBlack movement that started back, I'd say, probably in the 60s, if not even before that. Dr. King, when he was in, I'd say, Tennessee, I'd say about April 3rd, 1968, he was helping out with some of the sanitation workers there. And what he did was, during his last speech, or one of his last speeches, he called on the folks down there to remove their money, take their money out of the downtown bank and put it into the Tri-State Bank, which was a Black-owned bank at that time. And what that was a call to action to help people understand the power of their consumer dollars and to move it into institutions that were more financially fit to serve them. The very next day, April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was assassinated. And so it fast forward, what we have done here. And again, back in July of 2016, there were a bunch of deadly police shootings in the Black community. And a couple of myself and the other co-founders, we kind of met very organically. And through our mutual desire to kind of liberate the Black community, we created the Cowrie Initiative. The Cowrie Initiative, the Cowrie Initiative, of kind of like a play on words from kind of like the ancient kind of medium of exchange, like the cowrie shells.
Yes.
Yeah. So Cowrie stands for Cooperative Wealth Reinvestment and Empowerment. And under that umbrella falls BankBlackUSA. And it's basically an independent type of activation. And our mission is to promote financial advocacy in Black communities and build upon the work of past generations, which I just spoke of. And so we're just trying to get people to understand the financial fitness of the institutions in which they put their money into, and become more financially literate, be more conservative with their money, and understand the power of their consumer dollar. And and how best that they could leverage their money to buy assets, and then better position them to create generational wealth, because there's a huge wealth gap here in the U.S. and it's really something that people need to be aware of, I would say. And that's what we're doing. Our goal is to put all that information, again, we're not speaking about anything new, but to package that, put it in a very digestible format for people to understand all in one place. We're not here to be a kind of a rubber stamp for Black-owned banks and financial institutions. We're not here to be a marketing piece or a marketing arm or an advertising arm, but we're here to get people to understand and put it in one digestible place, and to inform them so they can make better decisions. And that's really the catalyst for what we do.
So from an outsider perspective, outsider in the sense that though I've visited the US a few times, I'm not American, and I've read about dynamics, but I've never lived them. Mm-hmm. So how would you explain to me the need for banking Black services as opposed to services for everyone? Yeah,
that is a great question, because people are going to say right away, oh, why has it got to be Bank Black? Why can't it be something else? Why can't it just be for people who are, hard up on money, or who have a problem, who are low income? And so the way how I answer that is this. I say, look at all the financial institutions that may be local to where you live here in the US. And, although we don't call them particularly white banks, we look at the demographic in which they serve specifically. And so understanding that, you still don't have to classify it as a white bank, but you have to classify it as who are these banks look to serve. And so once you maybe step back, and then you could say, okay, I could get that. But even further, The federal government has established things like MDIs, minority depository institutions, and CDFIs, and or community development financial institutions, to help better serve low-income groups of individuals or communities. And they recognize that for a long time, for so many, people have been excluded from this economy. They've been kind of left out. And so that's very important. I mean, contrary to popular belief, all things are not created equal. And so
even though they should be, and we would like them to be, they simply are not. Can you say that again slowly? MDSIs?
Yeah. So we're going to go with MDI
MDI.
Yeah. And MDI is a minority depository institution, and a CDFI is a community development financial institution. And these are both kind of like funds, rather certifications that institutions can get. And so with that then comes funds from the Fed that will be geared to and kind of tailored to serve certain groups. And it's important. Also, there's what we call the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. And what that purpose is really, the purpose of it is kind of like a report card. And so these institutions, what happens is they have an obligation to the communities, the local communities in which they serve. So if you're living in a part of wherever you're at, the banks there have a responsibility to give loans, to help people buy homes, to help people start businesses. And what happens is often a lot of these larger banks, or what happens is they do not meet their CRA obligation to the communities in which they serve. So it's like they have a failing report card, if you will.
Oh, wow.
And so historically, and this is a lot of the data that you can find on our website, BankBlackUSA.org. You can find that we're putting all this information in one place so that people can understand that historically, Black banks have served its people better. It's served the people who are struggling in ways that have been identified better than these other banks or other financial institutions. So that's critical to understand, because what does that practically look like when we talk about why do people need certain access? And I mean, if you just drive through certain neighborhoods, what's going to happen is you're going to cross the tracks, if you will, and then you're going to notice that there's banking deserts. There are people that are underbanked or not banked at all. And what you're going to find in those places, you're going to find payday lenders. You're going to find a lot of pawn shops. You're going to find on every block, probably you're going to find a storefront church. You're going to find a liquor store. You're going to find a Chinese food restaurant, and you're going to find probably like a bodega, at the corner, but you're not going to find any banks. You're going to find Western Unions. You're going to find a lot of that. Yeah. And that is, in a lot of ways, it's not helping people who are already hard up and have been economically excluded. And so just by virtue of Black banks even existing, tells a story. And that story unfortunately has been left out of mainstream education. So that's a little kind of profile as to the needs.
Yeah, it's as you say that, it takes me back to when I was about 16 years old. I used to play a lot of basketball, and we had a tournament. Yeah, I've got the fingers to prove it, like broken, jammed up fingers.
You got a little jump shot.
yeah. Actually, I was like a number 2 guard. I had a pretty good shot.
You got to brag, huh? You got to brag.
No, it was okay. It was okay. But during, I think we were in like DC or something for a tournament. Yeah. And our basketball coach, we were driving through a few neighborhoods, and he was like, what do you guys notice? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Because I mean, I wasn't necessarily on that,
on that wavelength.
Yeah. And he said, do you notice any liquor stores in this neighborhood? Yes. Like hair salons? Yes. Like check cashing places? Yes. Right. Yeah. And then we drove through other neighborhoods and we didn't see those things. And he was like, what does this mean? Like, what does this tell you? He just asked questions to provoke thought, not to draw any conclusions, but just to start thinking. And since then, I've been to the US like quite a few times, and I've noticed that that seems to be a consistent pattern.
Yeah, it really is. And so what does that translate to? How do these things happen? There's a book written by Mr. Richard Rothstein called The Color of Law, and it explains the history and the legacy effects of redlining. And it's very important to understand these things. And, every book, everything you read, I teach my children, and I often admonish others to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And then when you get your answers to your questions, question your answers and be a critical thinker, to dive in, to be an independent thinker, and kind of get to a point where you could hear both sides of the story.
Yeah.
Take a look back, do diligent research, and then formulate your own ideas based upon everything that you see, based upon your own logic and based upon your own perceptions as to what's really out there. So that, your coach was giving you a lesson of practicality as to what is, as they say, what it is. And so, this is all predatory to people who are already at a financial disadvantage. And so CDFIs, they could be banks, they could be credit unions, loan funds, micro loan funds, venture capital providers, and they help families finance first homes, supporting community residents and starting businesses. But in order for a community to really kind of thrive economically, it requires access to basic financial services. Okay, affordable credit, investment capital, but historically, it just hasn't been for low income communities and individuals. So, and that access, of course, has been limited. And we have to really start understanding what are the legacy effects of that. We have to dig deeper and to really understand history, to find out how we got to where we're at, and we don't repeat those histories. And then to how can we move forward? I like to say disinfectant is sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so that's what we try to do with the Cowrie Initiative, working with different organizations, but also with BankBlackUSA in particular. What we're trying to do is work with colleges and universities and scholars alike to build resources and tools, interactive maps, if you will. If you go to the dashboard on our website, and you could see kind of where things are and where they're laying out and where kind of like these inequities lie, but not in an effort to have people remain in the past, but in an effort to do better. Once people know better, they do better. So that's what exactly.
Moving forward. And it's I'm so glad we're doing this episode now. I find it very timely because I'm just going to read here. I guess Biden recently spoke on the study of digital dollars and cryptocurrency. And in a press release from Reuters or Reuters, whatever, Reuters.
It's Reuters.
Tomato, that I read, it said that 5% of poor Americans do not have bank accounts. 5% of poor Americans do not have bank accounts. And I thought, like, for anyone on the outside looking in, how is it possible that such a developed nation with the world's reserve currency could have people who are unbanked?
Yeah, this is I love talking about this, and I'm glad you bring it up, Saida, because that is a wow, right? People are going to step back at that and say, "Oh, America leads in everything. The U.S. leads in everything. We got the world reserve. The USD is the world reserve currency. How could this be that people are either not banked or underbanked? And why don't people just get off their behind, get a job,
and work harder
work harder, right?" And so I never like to come to the conversation with just bleeding heart emotion. A lot of what we do at the Cowrie Initiative and through this initiative, BankBlackUSA, is come with facts and data. Okay, hard data.
Yeah.
And so the facts are that, like how you said, some of those stats there, that there are many folks that are not banked. And why are they not banked? Is it just because they don't want to work and they have no bank account? They're not working, have no money? No. There's many times where people become unbanked or not banked due to medical conditions, due to homelessness. And it's just a way, it's an economic downturn. But people who have traditionally have access to finance and lending, they're able to do things like buy single family homes. And that single family home has been and we all know it's been historically it's been a means to establish generational wealth. So people who were able to secure a federally insured home loan were able to buy a single family home. That home increases in value. They have equity. They can borrow against that equity to send their kids to school, to do all type of things, to hedge against economic downturns, or just simply bequeath that wealth to their to their children in their future generations. There have been other groups, Africans, descendants of slaves, who have not had that same opportunity. They've been excluded by design. It's been engineered this way for this to take place. Now we have to go get all type of high interest loans by which, they would never be able to establish that type of equity in their home, never probably even owning their home over a course of 30, 40, 50 years. And so that is really, what are the legacy effects of that is what I'm saying. And, I'm willing to come to the table and debate with anyone who has done their research, because like Dr. John Henrik Clarke would say, I'm only going to debate with my equals, and everyone else I'm going to teach. So I'm willing to come to anyone's table who has done their research and to intellectually, respectfully debate on the issue of the history, what has been done, and play on what are the legacy effects on that, and to talk about what the legacy effects of that, so that we can get to this equal playing field, this equal opportunity that we put out there. So it's a real thing. So it's important. If you could, I want to jump and give a quote here real quick. I think it's a perfect segue. 1969, James Baldwin and Paul Weiss were debating about discrimination on the Dick Cavett show. And James Baldwin says this. He says, "I don't know what most white people feel this country feel, but I can only include what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know that white Christians hate Black people or not, but I know we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is Black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. So it says a great deal to me about a Christian nation. It means I can't afford to trust most white Christians, and I certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby has anything against Black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates Black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my life, my woman, my children, on some idealism, which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen." And so again, that's a quote from James Baldwin from, that's powerful. Yeah, it's real powerful. So, and again, I say that I thought it was pretty timely as we got into our conversation, that there's this idealism that exists, that everything is equal opportunity. But where's the evidence of that? You want me to base my actions based upon something that I've never seen proof of. And so that said in 1969, that could have been said yesterday, and it still would have been quite applicable here in the US. And again, anyone who would like to debate me on that or come to a respectful playing field and talk about that, I'd be willing to go in quite hard on that subject matter. So just wanted to point that out as a point of reference and just to provide context.
So, excuse me. So like, what is it like tangibly? Like, how do you operationalize? What is it like to be unbanked living in the US? What does your day, week, month, year look like? Do you go from paycheck to paycheck? How does that look?
Yeah. So practically speaking, people who are unbanked or underbanked, and again, it's not a problem just here in the US, it's all around the world. Yeah. People are unbanked, excluded from their nation state's economic system. What it looks like is you develop a group of people who become dependent on government in many ways. Yet the narrative is we want to get people not dependent, but yet we have to create an economic system that allows inclusion. And inclusion is a very powerful thing. And just real quick, Saida, what you're doing with fostering inclusion is really amazing, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
what you're doing in the space, your work. And I can really appreciate it because it's necessary. And as you put it, inclusion is what allows organizations to benefit from diverse mix of individuals.
Yeah.
But inclusion also allows individuals to maintain a sense of uniqueness while experiencing belonging to their group. And so an organization that moves from diversity to inclusion performs better. And so if we would move as a nation from diversity into inclusivity, which is a completely different thing, I think we would operate better. And I think that speaks to what you just said. Like, what is it like to operate? What does it practically look like to not be inclusive in our economic systems? Well, here it is. The proof is in the pudding. We're sitting right smack dab in the middle of it. And you have these extreme polarizations of generational wealth, extreme polarizations of net worth in families. And so, this is what it is. And if you go to our website in BankBlackUSA, I'm trying to get people to, I can't give it all away here. People have to do their own research, They really got to reach out. People have to just don't go to our website. People have to be willing to understand this thing, not just sit in their little silos, in their echo chambers and say, oh, well, I was taught to work hard and my ancestors come here from wherever and they worked hard. And so what does it look like to answer your question? It looks like exactly what we have here today. We have extreme polarizations, extreme wealth gaps between different demographics. And it's not due contrary to popular belief or mainstream media. It's not due to people not willing to work hard. It's not all of that. Are there some people who are completely disenfranchised and have succumbed to just being fed by the government? Absolutely, I would say. And so I'm not sitting here trying to be devoid of that reality. If we really want to figure out why this exists, then we would really dig deep into our legacy, our dirty laundry, come to admit that and really do better. But really, the signs say that we're not willing to do that. And so, we got to do better. I got plenty of solutions. I love our conversations to be solution based. And so that's another part of our what we do at BankBlackUSA. The call to action is to move your money out of the bank. And the call to action we see during deadly police shootings in the Black community. We always see an uptick on our website in the back metrics of people of coming to our website looking for something to do. And just like Dr. King was like, move your money out of the downtown bank. That bank that's not supporting you, that bank that's not giving you loans, that bank that won't even let you come in, right? Move your money into a Black-owned bank that's going to serve you. That's a call to action. And so what we also do is we help people who want to do better, who know better. We help them transition from just being angry and taking to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram and getting into Twitter wars. We help them do something real substantial so that they can move forward and move the needle on what's going on. And that's a very powerful thing, to move from just talking about it to doing something. And that's what we're about. We're about action. We're about providing people stats, data, hardcore facts, and then leading them down that road to what they can do to lean in and create the change that they want to see in the world. And that's what I'm helping on do. Right, correct. Resources and tools.
I don't know if you've seen Ray Dalio. He just came out with a new book, something about how to deal with the change in the new world order, something along those lines. I'm misquoting the title. But he also released a video on YouTube, which to me is quite powerful because he describes the economic cycles of empires. He looks at the British, the Dutch, the Americans right now, outwardly the battles they face in terms of maintaining hegemony, and then internally some of the things that happen throughout the cycle. And so during a cycle of growth, he speaks about the fact that education is very important, keeping an open mind, and looking at the best thoughts is very important. And conversely, when an empire is on the downward trend of its hegemony, the wealth gap increases significantly. There are increasing conflicts between the rich, the top 10%, and the poor, the bottom 90%. And within the bottom 90%, there are increasing tensions based on race, religion, ideology, left,
Yes.
right, like you name it, it increases. And I think it's fascinating that he should release that at this particular moment
Oh,
in
yeah.
time,
Yes.
because we know what's happening externally. We know that China seems to be on the rise.
Yes.
And we also know that internally, not just in the US, but in many countries, many Western countries, there seems to be this rise in populism.
Yes.
And there seems to be more outward aggression towards other. Your
Yeah.
other could be, it's based on who you are, of course,
Right.
but there is more aggression towards others. So I find what's happening right now is very, very interesting.
It is. So what I'm hearing you saying is like, what is this signaling to?
Yep.
And what is it signaling to? And I love this data that you provide, because I just love data, because it gets us away from our anecdotes. It gets us away from ourselves and allows us to step back and see what's really going on. And a lot of times, sometimes these things could be, I don't want to say plagiarized, they could be manipulated in certain ways based upon whatever the outlet's, partisan agenda is. But a lot of times we have to, like I said, we got to do our research. We got to be diligent. But I just love what you just said, because it's signaling towards exactly what's going on here in the US. And again, it's not all good. But how do we do better? And I think once we allow people to be included in the economic systems that exist, these gaps will tighten up. These gaps will close. I mean, we still have extreme, I don't want to say discrimination. I want to get away from these words because let's just say you go to get your home appraised. Still to today in the US, we have extreme inequity in how homes are appraised based upon who's living there and in what neighborhoods. Even though we have comparable properties, they're still going to appraise differently. And so this really blows my mind. So how do we do better is really what we're getting at. And so we have to really know our history. We have to understand this and let people be included in the economic system so that they could do better. And the fact of the matter is that people have been excluded, and it's caused us to be into this kind of this slope that we're in. But I think people are getting aware. I think through technology, through that we have access to, people are becoming more aware of what's going on. So I think I'm particularly optimistic. I think in this world that we're heading into of finance that's in technology, as it crashes violently into this intersection, I think people are becoming way more aware. I'm concerned though, because people, they're having access to all type of digital technology. And you mentioned digital currency a little bit earlier. And people who are not financially literate and who have never had really access, it's gonna get a lot worse for those groups before it gets better. And so, I had the privilege of speaking with a gentleman by the name of Ovik Roy, and he is the president of an organization called FreeOp, the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity. And man, what a brilliant mind this gentleman is, in that he understands, as we got into some of our economic conversations, that if we focus, and I don't want to frame him as being some type of bleeding heart liberal. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But he speaks, he's worked on a couple presidential campaigns, and in this think tank in that he that he manages, if you will, he understands that when the political, he understands that if we look to uplift the least of these, as I like to put it, we have a strengthening of the economic system. And I don't want to speak for him, but he's just a brilliant mind. And I get encouraged speaking to people like you and people like him when we're just trying to hash this out. And I know what people are listening to you. People are listening to people who are really diving deep in trying to get people to understand what's going on a little bit better. So it's when we but when we look at the least of these, the people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck, when we economically include them and give them access, whereby they haven't had access, things get better. And you don't have to believe me. I always say, don't trust, verify. Go look at the data. Where I'm leading into.
And it's the
perfect
segue. Don't trust, verify.
Yes,
so how does Bitcoin help?
Yay. One of my favorite topics. Bitcoin is a beautiful technology. And for many, like myself, it starts off as a real curiosity about this strange internet technology, this strange internet money, this goofy, kind of nerdy, cypherpunk birthed type of thing. But Bitcoin, very quickly, it rolls and snowballs into an economic conversation.
Oh, totally.
Right. It rolls quickly into an understanding of money, of monetary policy, and it becomes a real education. And so it really is necessary to understand money. And a lot of us are not taught to understand money. We think we do, but we do not. The fact of the matter is, from my perspective, I don't want to speak for anyone, is that all of us have a relationship with money, but we do not understand it. Whether it be good, bad, or different, we do have a relationship with money, whether we're chasing it, always trying to raise our income, or whether we're have a lot of it and don't know how to invest it, so that we can create what we want to see with it. Because money is not, contrary to what many people think and what many people have made, money is not to be saved and say it's like money has become like money saving has become like somewhat of a religion. And money is merely meant to be used to get at something. And so what I found is that people who tend to be on the lower spectrum tend to want to increase their income. But wealthy people, or people who understand money a little bit better, they look to obtain more assets. And so assets appreciate. You could borrow against these assets to then acquire more assets, and hopefully more scarce assets. And so that better positions them over time. And so that in order to understand it, you have to understand how money works, understand how central the legacy banking system works. And I'm not an expert on this by any means. I'm not a banker by trade or anything, but fortunately I've been connected in and tied in with some folks who are, who understand money very well. And often because of exclusion, structurally engineered exclusion from an economic system, people have been left out. So Bitcoin helps in that it levels the playing field. It allows.
Can you say that again, please?
It absolutely levels the playing field, and it steadies the goalpost. And I say that very intentionally with my language. I say steadying of the goalpost because the goalpost is frequently moved. It's moved all the time. And so the government has opportunities to say, you know what, we're going to print more money to fund our agency to no end. And that is very important to understand, and how that affects inflation. And when the government needs to hand out more money, often the people who are most credit worthy, they get access to those funds first. Big companies, hedge funds, they get access to that money first. They buy up all the assets, inflating it. And then by the time it trickles down to less credit-worthy people like myself and others, everything is homes and that are already 10, 15 up, X up, it's already inflated. So not only is that debasing the currency, making it less valuable, it's making it more difficult to acquire assets for people who do have the means, who are working hard, who are
saving for their down payment. Like, let's say you need 10% down today. In a few years, a home that's, let's say, was, I don't know, 100K. Turns out to be 250K. By the time you save the 10% for your 100K home, it's too late.
It's too late.
The goalpost has shifted, like you said.
It's a real. So like I said before, a lot of us have a relationship with money, but we're not understanding why we're continually chasing this money. Why can I pay off my student loan debt? Why cannot I afford these things? I'm being conservative. Yet it seems as if I'm in this rat race, a lot has to do with financial literacy, understanding what's coming in, what's going out, and establishing and understanding your cash flow for the month, and then being able to operate within that and live within your means. A lot of it has to do with that, but that's a financial literacy conversation. But back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin allows people to acquire. So it serves kind of two purposes, as I see it. And this is it serves many purposes. Bitcoin is a tool, but Bitcoin, number one, is it's open. It's an open monetary network. Anyone can use it. It's permissionless. And so that's wonderful. It's completely decentralized. There's no one single point of failure in that no one is telling you can or cannot have access to it. You don't even need the internet. You can access to the satellites now. That's the first question I get sometimes when people talk about, well, what if they shut down the internet? You can use the satellites. It cannot be stopped. It's decentralized. It's permissionless. Okay. And the money, the Bitcoin, little b, anyone can have it. Anyone can transact with it. It doesn't care who you are. It knows no barriers, no race, no demographic, anything. And so how does this make it better? It makes it better in places like El Salvador, where the president there, Bukele, has made it legal tender. And so what does that mean for a completely unbanked population? What does that mean for a nation state that now has legal tender, that anyone can participate in the economic system? That is tremendously, and I get excited about talking about this, because to go from having people who cannot enter in to economy to them being empowered to not only be able to transact with money that is permissionless, to be used as a medium of exchange, they can also have a store of value. It could serve two purposes. And so to have a store of value, now you may not be able to own property, real estate, land, but then you could own digital energy, if you will, that serves another purpose as property that no one can touch. If you had the opportunity to buy prime real estate in downtown Manhattan in the 1920s, that would be truly valuable. You would hold on to that. It would be a store of value for you. Yet you would have to pay taxes on that. You would have to pay maintenance, and the government could probably seize it from you if they eminent domain, which, by the way, has been done plenty of times to Africans and descendants of slaves, by the way, in which because of lack of resources to legal counsel, property that's been owned by people who are working hard, their property was ripped and stripped from them. So that's important to understand. Okay, that's in Manhattan Beach in California. That has happened, where finally the governor and some of the local legislators there realized that, and had to give back these Africans, these descendants of slaves, their family. They had to give them back their property because it was so blatant. And a lot of times, the only times people react and do right is when they're getting mud thrown on them. And so we have to really understand what has really gone on. But back to Bitcoin, to empower people with an open monetary network whereby anyone can participate is truly amazing. And people need to really understand it for what purpose it serves. And of course, you get people all thinking it's for criminals and all type of you get the FUD, you get the energy FUD, which I love to bust. I love to do energy FUD busting, by the way. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, but it's a legitimate concern. So Bitcoin is a tremendous thing.
And with the energy FUD, it's like I think I'm kind of not bored, but like I've heard so much of it. And I mean, there's so many examples if you care to look to disprove a lot of the energy FUD. I used to work in the oil and gas industry. And as soon as I learned that with flared gas, you can actually use that to mine Bitcoin, it just clicked. It was like, okay, of course, like it makes sense. And then you see statistics on energy consumption for like Christmas lights or washing machines or so many, like the banking system, war, so many other things. And it's like, what would you rather have?
Yeah, so you have to understand what's going on here is the people in the government here, at least in the US, they have to, and probably other places, other nations, the people who are in power or who are elected to be in these positions, they have a fine line to walk. They have to figure out whether or not they are going to protect the interests of the nation or protect the interests of the people in the nation. And that's a fine line. And so Bitcoiners and people who want to be completely self-sovereign and free, they tend to care about what's their individualism, right? What could better serve me? And I think that's very powerful because everyone wants to be empowered. But again, the people who are elected, the people who are, in power, if you will, as we like to say, they have an obligation also, or maybe they have allegiance to whatever power structures are keeping them there. Because let's be honest, they have tremendous influence and power. They're being lobbied by multi-billion companies. And so they're living a life that they probably don't want to give up in a world that has been working for them for so long and working for their families for so long. So why would you want to empower people? That would jeopardize, power rarely wants to concede power. And so without making this a power struggle conversation, let's stick to, do we want people to thrive? Do we want humanity to thrive? And so I'm concerned. I'm a huge nature conservativist. I own large tracts of land, and I don't like when the arborist comes by and says, hey, Mr. Logan, we have to trim these trees back because the power lines here, we don't want this 60-foot tree to fall on these power lines. It hurts me that they're going to chop these land down. So chop these trees down. So I'm one that's very concerned with power and rather with energy consumption as well in nature. I'm concerned with that. I'm concerned with global, this climate, but the way how it's framed in what we're getting at is really off the point. And as we know, those of us who do our research, Bitcoin and its mining could do very well for the environment. And I would argue to say better than what we're doing now. So, I always say, let's talk about it,
totally. And I would say, as opposed to individualism, I would say individuation, which is like self-actualization. So I find that people who are very much into Bitcoin, irrespective of background, are very much into realizing their full potential.
Yes.
Which means not necessarily going along with the crowd. Even though sometimes on Twitter, I guess you can detect an echo chamber, but outside of Twitter, it is really about self-development and individuation so that you become your best self.
Yes.
And as a result, you can make better contributions to your community.
Yes, I can't say any better than what you just said. When you are able to empower yourself, when you have the ability to support yourself, you could be your best self. And why wouldn't we want to do that for all humanity? Why wouldn't we want to do that? If someone could please explain that to me, I'll look at it and look you in the face, have that courageous conversation, and then we could go there. But it's I think we're dealing with more than just because I think most people have come from an egalitarian type of thought where they they believe in equality. I think I would like to think, and people say, Jonathan, you look at life through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I get the same thing.
But you know what? I got to be pragmatic, yet I got to be hopelessly hopeful in that. What are we going to do? All up in a ball and die? No.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to work for good, and we have to treat people with love and respect. And I know what you want. I know you want safe passage for you, your husband, and your child, right? I know you want to get from school to work safely. I know you want good education for your kids. I know you want access to healthy food and clean water for your kids. I know you want those things. I don't care what you look like or where you come from. And I want to be able to have the self-respect of going out there and producing something and being able to be a participant in an economy. We all want to do that. And history shows that ancient civilizations do have that. But again, once we uncover, I think what I'm trying to do is somewhat, and what my organization is trying to do is be somewhat of an archaeologist and uncover what has been for so long. And yet once we uncover it, once we shed light on it, we do better. And so if we can all be archaeologists, if you will, and uncover this thing, study it, uncover it, and then we can say, oh man, this is amazing. This is a wow moment for me. I think we would be in a better place. That's just the way I operate. But I know no matter where you come from, what you look like, I know that you want the same things that I want very, on a very fundamental basis. So
definitely.
For sure.
What has the community's response been so far? And I'd like to add to my question. Sure. So again, I think the last time I was in the US was in 2017. I'll be in Miami for like a day or two on our way to El Salvador. I can't wait. But I'm
hating on you right now. So
but my observations are limited to media of what's going on in the US.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of reality television. I see certain like videos that seem to promote a high time preference lifestyle. I have no idea if this actually represents people, like ordinary people, or if this is like a reality. So with that in mind, what has, or how has the community responded to your project?
Yeah, you've well, particularly our project, as far as BankBlackUSA in the Cowrie Initiative, we've been working. So I'll speak to how the work that we've been doing with the organization and how the responses we've got from that, and then I'll talk to what I believe how people are responding to this new internet money, this new technology. I'll respond to that very locally, because in order to do that, you really have to start meeting people. You really have to start talking to people. It can't be done through these this virtual world. You have to get out there, and so I've begun to do that. So let me speak to that just real quick, and then I'll go into what my organization has done. I think people are very curious. I think people are have, because of the cell phone, because of the internet technology age, people are have access to things that they never had access before. Decentralized finance has opened up a whole world for people. But I think I think people are missing the education. And a lot of times people are using Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in the same breath, in the same space, in which they do not belong, in my opinion.
Okay? So we carry that same bias. I agree with you 100%. They're two separate things.
They're two separate things. And I think it's a shame, but I think education is the great separator. And once you get that education, you can go forward. Unfortunately, lack of education for certain groups is not as detrimental as it is to others who already have the wealth. And so you get a bunch of people who are playing around with cryptocurrencies, trying to make some fiat, they're going to wind up wrecked and rug pulled and holding an empty bag. And so that's going to be way more detrimental, way more critical to certain groups than others, because of this engineered wealth gap that we've know quite a lot about. We understand what's going on, yet we're not willing to do much about it, in my opinion. Okay. But I'm trying to do my best. So that's kind of been the response that I've seen, is that people are very curious. People are getting out there. Everyone's got these platforms, exchanges on their phones that they're playing and basically gambling with at a very high level, because gambling is a problem. And, people are trying to make money. Everyone is trying to get to that point where they could better position themselves. And a lot of these projects, as I call them, are not out there. And I'm not saying all alternative coins and projects are bad or they're scams. Many Bitcoin maximalists, as we call them, may assert that, but I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm a freedom maximalist.
Yeah, that's something that I'm understanding more and more.
Yeah, people could do whatever they want to do. I'm a freedom maximalist. Bitcoin is a tool, and these things are tools, but education is the key. And once people know better, they do better. So do I enjoy Bitcoin? Do I believe that it's the only one per se? Absolutely. But people want to dibble dabble and play. They got to understand that a lot of these projects are just that. They're just projects. They're just nothing. They're scams, many of them.
And they don't solve the problem created by money printing. I think that's the big fundamental. Like, if you're chasing the paper, it's not going to solve the fundamental problem. Exactly.
Yeah, it will. Exactly. That was so powerful what you just said. Thank you for adding that. If you're chasing the paper, these other things, they're not going to solve the problem. And it comes from a lack of understanding of the properties of Bitcoin in relation, aligning or correlating to these other things. It's going to exacerbate the problems. These things are going to cause people to dibble dabble and cause people to gamble just to create more fiat, just so they can get more fiat. They're not going to get the education. It's not going to lower their time preference. Okay. Because it's going to be out there gambling more and more. So I think it's helping some communities and not helping other communities. And those communities are the historically disadvantaged ones, which I think if education would be able to hedge against that and pull people up out of that. That's why Bitcoin is seen as such a threat to the current, pardon me. That's why Bitcoin is seen as such a threat to the current economy. And that's why we have these, I'm not going to get too much on a rant on this, but these legislators, these people in power, what they do is they, like I mentioned before, they have to protect the interests of the nation. And, you know, they're going to be tied to their party and their party agendas. They're going to be tied to their costume party, I like to put it.
Yeah.
They're not tied to anything other than that. Deep down inside, they own a ton of Bitcoin. You know, they understand this thing very well, but they're tied
Isn't
to
that the truth though? Like,
I believe it.
I'm persuaded that so many of them have like
Tons of
they're
it.
hodling. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I mean, come on, these are rich folks. They know what time it is. There's a reason why these major corporations, some of them that they're being lobbied by, there's a reason why they've got a ton of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. There's a reason for that. So, you know, transitioning to what my organization has done, what's the response been? I think it's been wonderful. The work that we've been doing, we've been partnering with universities to the likes of University of Michigan, the University of Kansas,
nice.
North Carolina State University. We just employed 3 interns, one from Brown University, one from Michigan State University, and one from another that's escaping me right now. They have been helping us build out interactive maps. And we do this by design also, so that we tap into the scholars, the young minds who are really aware and hypersensitive to things, that have the energy and have the focus to do this work and have the bandwidth to go out there and do amazing things. Some of the not only the professors and the scholars, but the students as well have been tremendous that we've been working with. And the work shows for itself. And so we've been very fortunate to have gotten a lot done, I would say. And I'm not just saying that just because I'm a co-founder of this organization, but I think we're getting a lot of traction. There's been a lot. They say when people copy you or copycat you, that's one of the best compliments. We're seeing a lot of that with our work that's going out there. So I think the response from the work that we've been doing has been very good. We're gaining traction. We're working currently right now with the National Bankers Association, building out this. Oh, wow. We're building out this millennial kind of task group, if you will. I don't want to speak too much about it because it's in the works. But yeah, we're doing a lot of things that's going to have a lot of positive impact. So I'm very excited about what's going on. The response has been very well. And there's a lot of people out there who came out during the 2016 BankBlack movement, that kind of like Killer Mike, who's a big entertainer and activist. He was kind of Run the Jewels, Run the Jewels, kind of like he was like kind of like the unofficial officials, kind of like spokesperson for this movement. But yet a lot of these organizations have fallen off. They want to do the good work, but yet maybe they didn't have the cohesiveness or for it. But we've been moving along steadily. We've got some very dedicated co-founders who are just laser beam focused on what we're trying to do. And we're all on there. You can check us out on our website and in other places. And we're just going hard, Saida. Nice. We're trying to do the work, and it's been amazing to connect with people like yourself who are also doing great things and trying to get people to open their eyes, but who also understand. I think when we were building some rapport, there were some lived experiences that you can relate to in your professional work. Like, there are dynamic things that happen to you as a woman that looks like you have to go through. And it's not, I would say, isolated incidents. These things. Totally. So, you feel it. And so I just wanted to recognize that and appreciate you because I think it's necessary. And it's a labor of love. It can be exhausting at times. Sometimes you got to unplug. But I just wanted to recognize you, but also encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I certainly appreciate it. And people are noticing.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. It's, while we were building a rapport, I think I told you that the last time I was in the US in Chicago, I was in, I guess it's like a high-end neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I was in a store, and one of the people working in the store, a woman, just started following me around. Sure. And I was like, is this real? Mm-hmm. Because I mean, I touch wood where I live here. I've been here for some time, so I guess people recognize me or they just don't bother. But I was literally followed around the store, and I was like, do you think I'm going to steal something? And then it's like, and why would you make that assumption? Like, what about me says that I could be in a position or I would want to steal? Like my experiences in the US have always been met with some type of extreme, if I can say that. For me, as a woman who looks the way I do, I do not believe that I'm a victim. And I'm saying this very openly. I'm a very privileged person. So I'm not trying to be like, play the race card or try to be a victim or anything.
It's important to say that because people are going to right away. Oh, there it is, the card, the race card.
No, not at all. I'm very, very privileged. I'm very happy with my life. I'm blessed and highly favored, to use an American expression. But it is true that sometimes I'm like, there could only be one reason why I'm being treated this way or why I'm being perceived this way. Because if you have a conversation with me, you'll know right away that I'm here because I'm actually looking for something and I have no desire to steal. And by the way, if you want to have a conversation or like grab a cup of coffee, I'd be more than happy to like, ask you questions, tell you about my background, like that. I'm not that person, but America is a fascinating and polarizing place, I'd say.
It is. But a simple awareness, a simple mindfulness would be able to, you'd be able to better analyze, and you'd be better able and capable to understand why. And if you understand implicit biases, you understand why people have these perceptions because of the messaging that they've been onboarding their entire lives.
Yeah, exactly.
So these things are real. And, many people are not going to want to hear this because it's very painful for people to really come to grips with the fact that they've either been at an advantage or that they have been treating people a certain way unconsciously. It's very painful for people to come to these realizations. But those of us who are in public service, who work with other people who come from silos, who come from non-diverse places, non-inclusive spaces, you see the behavior. It's very polarizing when you work with people, particularly in my profession, in my wife's profession, she's also a civil servant, and her coworkers, the way how you treat people, and again, I've been blessed. I've been very privileged. I've been very blessed to be raised the way I was raised in church, to understand people and to have this kind of like soft approach to things. But the realities kind of make you have to be who you are. And so again, I'm very privileged to parent a household, grew up playing music in the church and instruments and singing in choirs and doing it. So
you sing as well?
Because I don't want to get into that, Can
I just say, like, I think your wife is a very fortunate person because you present very nicely. You're involved. You got
to scratch the surface, though. I'm not here trying to.
Sorry. I apologize if it's inappropriate.
No, that's not inappropriate. Listen, we could. It's okay to recognize what is and speak to it. And so it's perfectly fine. I'm not at all trying to present myself in any way. I just like to give context, to your listeners, so that they understand that sometimes as we go down this route, this road, we're talking about implicit biases, we're talking about lived experiences, we're talking about anecdotes. I don't let people, and I'm sure you could relate, I don't let people tokenize me. I don't let people say, oh, John, you did it. You passed the test. You got here where you did. Everyone else should be able to do it too. You worked hard. That's like the dog whistle. Oh, you worked hard. You could do it. But I came from a certain background with a certain family structure that allowed me to be where I'm at now. Down the street, couple of houses down, some of my buddies that I grew up with, different situation. They went home to single parent house. Alcohol abuse, drug abuse, sex abuse. They go home to an empty house. They're taking care of their younger brothers and sisters. So that's a very different life with very subsequently different outcomes. And so how do we change this? Get married, stop having so many kids, dude. No. How about we allow people to be economically included? Everything I've come to find, it comes down to economics. Everything comes down to economics and access and inclusivity. And we have to admit that the legacy effects of what we have done here in the Western world and some other parts of the globe has had the effects, the undesirable effects that we say that we want to remove. But yet we're not willing to deal with these past. Brian Stevenson was the head of I'm not going to go too long-winded here. Brian Stevenson is the head of an organization called the Equal Justice Initiative. And he talks about committing to a process of truth and reconciliation. And he talks about going to Germany and seeing the effects or the monuments paid to the Holocaust, and it's very prevalent. He talks about going to South Africa and seeing the tributes and the tributes to apartheid and what that's like.
And the Mandela Museum. I visited that. Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that, but also he turns to the U.S. and yet we don't have a recognition or any tributes being paid publicly to acknowledge the legacy effects of the terror lynching and the terrorism inflicted upon the Africans and the descendants of slaves and the people. What are that? And then these structures after the slavery, after the segregation, after the Jim Crow. We're not talking 100 years ago. We're talking 50 years ago. Okay, people just got the right to vote here in the U.S. Some within my parents' lifetime. So what are we really talking about? So we have to be able to put this all in context, help people understand, have these courageous conversations that me and you are having. And I'm, again, thankful for you being courageous enough to provide the space and the forum to have these conversations, because people just don't want to have them. So I think it's necessary. So
do you think this is a question that comes up from time to time? Do you think that Bitcoin provides kind of a safety net to have these conversations, in that it is a type of exit from the current system, the current hierarchy that allowed some of these atrocities to occur?
Yes, that is, you framed that very well. So I'll speak to, does it provide an exit? I would say yes and no. Here's the reason why. What you were before your discovery of Bitcoin, you're going to be after. You're just going to use it as a tool to promote, in most instances, what you were already into. And I say that because I've had some conversations with some people who are about freedom. And an uneducated mind, Bitcoin is not going to come in and all of a sudden say, oh, this open monetary system is going to empower people who have been left out. It's not going to do that. It's going to further exacerbate people, from what I've seen. Okay. It's going to further exacerbate people's very twisted ignorance to say that now there's a perfect outlet. So someone who has been ignorant, not known the history, not known the legacy, they're going to come up with Bitcoin and say, here, look, now here's Bitcoin. It's a fix-all. It's not a fix-all. But yet it does provide an opportunity. Bitcoin does provide an opportunity for people to enter in, but the education piece has to be there. The understanding that the legacy that has come up to that point where Bitcoin was invented or come to be, if you throw $1 million into someone's hands that doesn't have the education to do right by that money, to be a good steward of it, that person is not going to take that, may or may not, I don't know. They may not take that $1 million and turn it into 2 million or 3 million or an empire for generational wealth. I mean, the proof is there. Many athletes, pro athletes, many entertainers, they get this money and they wind up more broke than they were before they came into the money. So Bitcoin is it an escape? It could be. I think it provides an on-ramp into something very dynamic and very empowering. But at the same time, Bitcoin is not doing anything for the white supremacist bigot who has been this way and has not been educated. It doesn't, for me, from what I've seen, it hasn't done anything for that individual, except look to empower them even more and put more blame on the folks who are in very much economic contrast position-wise to what they are. So hopefully that gave that was a good answer to your question. But I thought it was a necessary question because many people argue, oh, Bitcoin is the answer. It solves the problems of the world. And, I push back against that sentiment. It doesn't solve the problems of the world. Reconciliation solves the problem. And reconciliation to you looks different to someone who hasn't had anything. So, I'm striving to have conversations with activists, incumbent legislators, candidates running for public office, regulators, and policymakers alike. I'm looking to have conversations with students, all these different groups, so that we can help them understand Because if you get a candidate who doesn't understand money, you support them, and then they get in office, they're gonna maintain the status quo, unless you educate them. And a lot of them do not know much about money. And so we have, as voters, and Bitcoin is now a single issue voter. Okay, you got many people in the space who are making sure that Bitcoin does become a single issue voter. I have had myself many conversations with several different candidates around the country running for Congress. One of them, Marcel Dixon. Big shout out to Marcel and his campaign where he talks about reparations. Big shout out to him. I've had conversations with Reverend Wendy Hamilton. She's running against a 30-year incumbent out of DC. Shout out to her. She's made Bitcoin part of her campaign. And so has Marcel Dixon. He's made Bitcoin, both of them, which are accepting donations in Bitcoin. Okay, campaign donations in Bitcoin. So they understand very well money, monetary policy. They understand how infrastructure for Bitcoin mining could empower communities like Marcel's community, a rural part of, he's running for Congress up against Mr. Clyburn, the 6th congressional district down in South Carolina. And one of the poorest districts ever, yet Mr. Clyburn, a 30-year incumbent, his district is in dire straits. And Marcel is an educator, a teacher, and he knows about Bitcoin and what Bitcoin mining can do for his community, provide jobs, harness energy, and really do well for his district. So there are candidates out there that I'm doing my best to have conversations with, so that they can be educated and so that they can understand this wonderful technology. And again, that speaks to your question earlier. I see tremendous traction with that. Clubhouse conversations, Twitter Spaces conversations, and in-person conversations as well. And traction is gaining there. So I'm hopeful, Saida. I think we're moving here. I think we're moving.
I think that I'm still quite idealist. Part of the reason is that I'm not in the same environment as you, so I don't face the same type of person. With respect to Bitcoin allowing a conversation about historical pasts, if you will. And the other thing too is that I always think that people respond to incentives. We respond to economic incentives. And I find that when the conversation is positioned that way, it's easier to talk about things that would make us feel uncomfortable when we know that, like within the Bitcoin network, the incentive structure is much different than we see today. And therefore, it is probable that we will make different choices. Excuse me, and our behavior will change because the incentive is different. And so like, I'm still in that phase of thinking, but perhaps I will change as I learn and grow and interact with more people.
Yes, Saida, I think you hit the nail on the head. How can we get people to change their behavior? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And the incentives are different. People are motivated by incentives. I talk about this a lot when I talk, even with the conferences that are going on, whether it be Miami or all the other kind of non-mainstream ones, if you will. What type of incentives are being put out there for people to understand what they need to understand to change their behavior? And I'm not a big proponent of putting out big celebrities or because you want people to change behavior based upon principle, based upon understanding that they could better position themselves in life. And so there has to be a good foundation of education put in place so that people can adopt, if you will. And I agree with you. I mean, I can't even talk more about that. You know, people respond to incentives, and what those incentives are will determine outcomes, I think, in people changing their behavior. But there's a reason why folks outside the Friday after Thanksgiving, sleeping outside on the street, waiting to buy plastic nonsense, flat screen TVs and nonsense. There's a reason for that, because they know that their money is not worth anything. Actually, let me rephrase that. I think subconsciously, something that I know that you've probably heard before, or maybe some of your listeners have heard before, is that, I work hard, I'm going to buy it while I can. That behavior is as a result of unsound money. It's
Yep.
as a result of my money's not going to be worth anything. Let me hurry up and get something in this lifetime that's going to mean something now. That's a high time preference behavior. Whereas if you had a good store of value, you'd wait. Okay. You would push back and you acquire things that are worth more over time. That's what hard money is. That's what Bitcoin is, hard to reproduce. So we got to get this education. I prefer not to go too technical here because Bitcoin can be technical. We don't want to start talking about the 21 million Bitcoin and all that, but I love talking about the other side, the behavior change, the time preference. I love talking about that because once you make that very clear to someone as to why they do what they do because of money, it's really an eye-opening opportunity. And again, we understand the relationship. We know, we're very aware of the relationship that each of us have with money, and we understand the importance of giving people our financial base. I mean, we could talk about, let me put it like this in this perspective, and don't trust, verify. Okay, millions of acres of land have been given away in the West and the Midwest during the 1863, 65, around this time. Millions of acres of land was given away to the European settler, the European immigrant. Millions of acres in the West, in the Midwest, understanding that giving them an economic base will help them prosper. But to the African, to the slave who had been here for 244 years, built this place for free, okay, nothing was given to them. Okay, to establish an economic base which they can build upon. And of course, I'm talking about 40 acres and a mule here. I'm talking about all of this. To give them an economic base to establish themselves, to have this legacy. So we understand, and we have the willingness to give, but we just didn't have the willingness to give to the people who have built the place. So we understand the nation, people, they understand what would help. And I give that context to understand, fast forward now, we understand what's going to empower people. We understand what's going to change those behaviors that you just spoke to. We know it, but are we willing to do it? Are we willing to do it? And people who are running on, plenty of candidates who are running on, I know we don't like to hear these reparations agendas, and they understand that establishing people an economic base can empower people. And I'll finish this thought out by saying this. What does reparations look like? It looks like equal opportunity to a loan to buy a house. And let me tell you, let me be clear on this, very clear, because we have Black people who are fighting, Africans, descendants of slaves, freedmen who are fighting for candidates who identify as freedmen, who want to establish reparations. But there are already plenty of reformative legislation and policies that are out there to assist other groups. I want to be clear on that, crystal clear, because we want to seem like, it's out there. Asians have it. Okay, they have it. It's out there. Don't trust, verify. There are reformative legislations that help these groups establish economic base due to their traumatic pasts and the historical events that have affected them. So let's not. Reparations has been stigmatized to be for whining Black folks who just think they deserve, and that's just not the case. Don't trust me, verify this. Go look into all the reformative legislations that are out there that help Asians, that help our Jewish neighbors. Go check it out. It's there. It's all there. So even I'll speak on this. Even Mr. Clyburn, who Marcel Dixon is running against, one of his first pieces of legislation was to help some group. I think it was Native Americans, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. But he put out one of his first legislations when he came into office was to help some Native folks. So it's out there already. But we're deathly afraid of giving the African some type of economic base, and that's what I'm talking about here.
Wow, I'm learning so much. This is I'm learning a lot, and we're just sitting and talking. We're just chatting it up here. I love it. And it's not the beginning. Like, this story has been going on for a very long time, and I feel like it's probably not going to end anytime soon. No, I believe that. These very. I love speaking to you, Saida, because we're just talking about the facts here, and
I think if people cozy up to this and it becomes, people have more courageous conversations, I think if people just get out of their echo chambers. It's very easy to get into an echo chamber, talk about everything that's relative to you in your group, and say, this is what it is. And then if that group has some type of power, to go out and then quote unquote advocate for the entire community. I see that a lot in the spaces that I'm in, the community engagement and the civic engagement that I'm involved with, the volunteer groups that I'm part of, these very local pieces of government, local government. You have people, exclusive groups, there's a lot of gatekeeping, and they get into these silos. They say, they say they're advocating for the community, yet their methodologies in which they use to outreach to the community are non-existent. So it's very easy for me and you to get into a room, or a bunch of Bitcoiners, maximalists, if you will, to get into a room and say this, that, and the third. And if we have some power, then we could put out and communicate to the world that this is what it is, and we're advocating for the group. What group are you advocating for? What type of inclusive methodologies have you used to come to your conclusion? Did you reach out to the most affected people to finger the pulse on them and then come together? See, it's much more challenging, and I would argue to say that it was much more beneficial to get differences of opinions from different people, from different walks of life. Okay, this republic that we live in here in the U.S., it's not a democracy. We use democratic ways to vote and do things, but this republic that we live in works best when we have contrasting viewpoints, not groupthink. Okay, not mob rule. Okay, so it works better when we have contrasting viewpoints. People who may think differently, come from different walks, may want different things, but realize the singular goal is to have a place where people are safe. Everyone can be safe. How can we come? I may not like what you got going on over there, but I want your kids to be safe too. How can we get to that? How can we recognize the humanity in somebody else? And why has that become such a bad thing for me to say, you deserve to be treated like a human as well? And I can advocate for you. It's like, it blows me away, but we all got to dig in. We all got to recognize what's going on. We got to have these courageous conversations and dig deep. And I think we can get to a better place. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful, Sada.
Well, if you or anyone from your team want to return to have more courageous conversations, which for me, I have to say are normal conversations. Like,
I need to hang out with you more then.
Yeah, it's I often get asked so many questions, but what you're doing is political. I don't see it as political. I don't really think in a binary way. I haven't been, I haven't been raised with the sort of left-right dichotomy. I'm super pragmatic in general, and I'm very curious, and I love speaking to people. So with those things together, I just ask questions, provide my opinion, provide some source data whenever I can. And so for me, it's not an act of courage. It's an act of understanding a bit more.
Yeah.
And it also helps me to clear the biases that I may hold.
Yeah. You're aware. Awareness is key. And let me tell you, let me somewhat try to embarrass you here a little bit.
Okay.
Listen, for some of your listeners who do not know or not familiar with your podcast, Sada is a phenomenal person, very attractive, by the way, and she's done a couple of podcasts. She did a wonderful one with her father, and so she did another one. Tell us about your, I think it was Bitcoin panties. I think. With Pablo. With Pablo,
panties for Bitcoin.
Panties for Bitcoin. You need to definitely check that out, because it's a really good. Not only is it great for the community, but I think it's great. I say all that to say that you would be great as a facilitator to these conversations, and I think you should.
Thank you.
You should take it to a next level. Because I think it's important, because image is everything. Me and you, while building rapport, we spoke about others that are in the space that don't look like you, who are influencing and becoming somewhat mainstream. And I think the diversity in the space, I think you'd be excellent for that, because it certainly would bring the courageous conversations to the forefront that other people are not willing to have. And so you're particularly positioned very well to be in that space. And so you got to sometimes kick the door in and do it. So if you're willing to do it, have these courageous conversations, put it out there. Check out Saida and check out her content, because it's not only is it eyebrow raising, it's touching on things that people are not willing to do. So she's unearthing some things that people just don't want to touch. And I think that's going to do wonders overall for adoption. So thank you again for being unapologetic in your ways and doing what you do, because it's essential going forward. So let's dig in. Thank you for the invitation. I'm gonna hold you to that, Saida.
Thank you so much, John. I'm blushing. Before we close out, tell the listeners once again where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. So again, you can find our work of the non-for-profit, the Cowrie Initiative.org. That's COWRIE initiative.org. And also BankBlackUSA, BankBlackUSA.org. You can find us, the websites there, all our socials. Myself, I'm on Twitter at NagelNaj. That's my John Logan spelled backwards. That's the best way for me to put it without spelling it. So I'm on Twitter at John Logan spelled backwards. All right, JONLOGAN. You could spell that backwards, and you'd find me on Twitter. So that's that. Hopefully they visit and check out some of our work, dig deep, and they don't trust, they verify.
Awesome. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us in this episode. Please visit BankBlackUSA.org and the Cowrie Initiative.org. That's COWRIEINITIATIVE.org. Check out Jonathan on Twitter at NagelNoj. That's NaGolNoj. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, send me an email at saida@fosterinclusion.com. That's SAIDAH@FOSTERINCLUSION.com. Catch me on Twitter at Saida Gomez or at Foster Inclusion, and you can follow our Instagram account at Foster Inclusion. Bye.